Today we are we're continuing in Chapter 6 in Procedure 6 on page 106. I hope you all have your books. And the last teachers, they started the section saying that you have a responsibility to communicate effectively. And they talked about how important it is to use your words properly and use proper words and not hurtful words to others, and all of that wonderful stuff. And today we are going to start on page 107. And page 107 is entitled, Your Tone of Voice Counts Too. Now, when I started, how did y'all feel? Were you excited to hear what I had to say? No? Some of you were looking at me like, okay, is this how class is going to go? But all the things I said were right. I told you what the last teachers did. I told you where we were going to start. I said nothing wrong. But the way I said it, all of you were like, I'm not sure if I want to be here. So would you agree that tone of voice matters? Yes, we did. Okay, so let's do this properly. I'm so excited to be able to teach y'all this month. And we are going to be continuing where they left off. And they did a really great job breaking down how important it is to communicate. And that we have a responsibility to communicate, and the best word I like there is effectively. That it's not just enough to communicate, we have to do it effectively. Because me talking and telling you all those things is great. You heard it, you could understand me, but did you feel it? Did it connect with you? Was it something that you wanted? Okay, so let's remember the two questions that we were asking ourselves when using words. How would I feel if someone said this to me? Are my words helpful or hurtful? And going on to page 107, we said that tone of voice counts too. Have you considered your tone of voice and how it affects others? Tone of voice counts for a large percentage of how our words are interpreted. Try this exercise. Say the following words if you are angry, and then say them if you are pleased. When I walked up, I said, please be seated. Or, please be seated. There's a difference, and it makes you feel differently depending on how it's said. It says, notice how your tone of voice can change the meaning behind your words. And I want to reference this kind of back to the first point where it said we make excuses, like it just slipped out, or I wasn't thinking for our words, but that's not an excuse that we can always use with our tone of voice, because our tone of voice shows how we truly feel in that moment. Yes, sometimes our words may get mixed up. We might not use the right word or the right meaning we're looking for. But our tone of voice more than likely always gives the person a hint on how we really feel or what we're really thinking. So it says, when interacting in your work environment, become aware. And I circled that word aware because it's not something that you can do effortlessly. You can't just go through the day and not paying attention. You have to be aware. You have to be conscious of the tone of voice you're using when addressing others. Does your tone convey that you are respectful and caring, or annoyed, sarcastic, and belittling? Using self-control will help you to control your emotions so that you can speak your words in a tone of voice that is always respectful, regardless of how you might be feeling. And I underlined that, and I highlighted it, and I circled it. Because think about it. Oftentimes, we're taught that respect is a feeling. Remember, give respect to get respect. Okay, well, if you're nice to me, I'll be nice to you. Quite frankly, it's a very childish way of thinking, right? But in the Peaceful Solution, we learned that respect is a standard. It's a quality that we hold ourselves to regardless. It's not a feeling. It's not something that comes along with whether our day is great or whether we're feeling great. It's a standard that stays the same no matter what. It says this is a second way to build responsible communication. And what did we learn that word responsible meant? And remember, I think we have a slide for that word responsible. Remember, we have to hold ourselves accountable to it. It's something that be accountable for your choices and actions, to take initiative, to complete all the tasks to the best of your ability, and to fulfill your obligations with a timely manner. So let's break that down. Responsible communication. Are you accountable for the things that you say and how you say it? Do you take the initiative, maybe if someone isn't responding to you respectfully, do you take the initiative to respond and communicate respectfully back with them? Do you do it in a timely manner? Do you start off in the morning grumpy and snapping at everyone, and then by noon warm up and you're cheerful and they're like, who is she? Because that was not the person I met this morning. So it's not, again, it's a standard, not something that we can allow to fluctuate depending on how we feel. It's something that stays the same. And that quote, it's not always what you say, but how you say it. And that is so, so very important, because we never realize how much we can shape someone or change the way that they view things or view the world simply by our tone of voice. How many of you have ever had a child show you a picture that they drew? Anyone? Right? Do you know that the tone of voice and when you react to that picture can determine whether that child ever draws again? It may sound silly, but it's completely true. Because if you say, oh, that looks so great, you did such a great job, thank you for sharing that with me, they're going to be excited, and the next time they're going to try to do it better because they want to hear more of that excitement. But if you say, oh, that's nice, you can see them shrink back into their shell, and they're like, oh, okay, well, maybe I shouldn't do this. What if that child grows up and gets a job in design, so to speak, and they're asked to draw something for their company? Do you think they're going to have the confidence to do it to the best of their ability? No, they're going to shy away from it because in the back of their mind, someone's tone of voice defined the course of their life. And when you stop and think about it like that, it really means that we have a responsibility, an accountability to make sure that we're aware of the things that we say and how we say it. All right, number 3, are you aware of your facial expressions? Are you? Okay. Stress, frustration, disappointment, and excitement can all clearly be seen on our faces as we interact with others. Now, I don't know about you, but this kind of scares me just a tiny little bit. Because how many of you forget sometimes that your face, like other people can see your face and they can see how you react? Am I the only one that does that? Okay, I forget. And I'll be talking to someone and I'll be thinking, and I'm like, wait, my face can probably show what I'm thinking. Let me fix my face. Okay, tell me I'm not the only one. Raise your hands if you ever forget that your face shows what you're feeling. Okay, great, I'm not alone. This is where the word aware comes. It says, what are your facial expressions when you are at work? Again, when you walk in 8, 7, 5, 9, whatever time, do you walk in excited to see everyone, or you're like, oh, I'm here again. Nice to see you all. What does your face show? Do you have a pleasant, courteous expression that say, I'm glad to be here? Or do your expressions say, I'm having a bad morning, leave me alone? Our facial expressions can influence the way others think and behave. And for that influence, you can reference the Building Moral Excellence, page 68, and the Character Unit, page 60, yes. Building Moral Excellence, page 58, and the Character Unit, page 60. And think about it. How many times has our face influenced someone to interact with us in a way, and we wonder why they're interacting with us like that? Why did she talk to me like that? Or why did she look at me like that? What did your face say? How did you talk to her? And we don't realize, we talked about it in the respect unit, that people are what make the world go around. People talking to people, interacting with each other is what makes our day what it is. So we have a part of that. It says, a pleasant expression puts others at ease. It says that you are open, friendly, and approachable. An unpleasant expression immediately puts others on the defensive. They expect you to be discourteous and impolite and will prepare themselves to respond in like manner. Now those words, defensive, prepare themselves, what does that make you think of? Yeah, it makes you think of war. You're creating a conflict before you've said anything, before anything has ever come out of your mouth. Automatically, you're setting yourself up for a war. And being the peaceful solution, we're learning to de-escalate that before it even starts. Be open, show them that you're approachable, and all of those things, they have a ripple effect. Because, okay, if your face looks a certain way and your voice sounds a certain way, they might interpret you as rude or disrespectful. Maybe they won't ask all the questions that are necessary to do the job properly if you're a supervisor or if you're a coworker. They're afraid to come to you They're going to ask you maybe just the one question on their 5 list of questions and then go and do something improperly, all because they were scared, right? And then what does that lead to? It could have a ripple effect. Maybe it could be poor work ethics. Maybe it could perpetuate throughout the environment. Now this person's like, okay, she looked at me wrong. So now she's thinking about it. When the person comes to her, she's going to look at her wrong. And she's going to be like, wait, why did she look at me like that? And it can go on and on and on. It says just one person can bring down the morale of a work area. And this downward spiral can begin with something as simple as an angry facial expression. And I like that word morale because it has the word moral in it, and I know that's not the way it's used right now in this sentence, but think of it that way as well. Just one person can bring down the moral value of the work environment simply if they're not constantly aware of their tone of voice, the words that they're using, and their facial expressions. It says, if you start off your morning with a grumpy expression and curt responses, your coworkers will most likely begin to treat each other in the same way. Being aware of your facial expressions is a third way to build a responsible communication. And then at the bottom it says, watch what you say. So we have 3 tips. Let's go over them again. First one is to use your words effectively. My best like word, effectively. Not just use them, but use them effectively. The second one is that your tone of voice counts too, and to always be respectful regardless of how you feel. And the third one is to be aware of your facial expressions. Okay, so let's go ahead and turn over to page 108. Okay, it says responsibility with using all forms of communication. So we broke down how important it is to use our words, our tone of voice, and our facial expressions. Now there's different ways that those might come into play. It says communication in the workplace can take many forms. Historically, these have mainly consisted of conversations in person or over the phone and written communications such as letters and memos. With today's growing use of innovative technology, there are new methods and types, both written and verbal communication, emerging, and everyone has a responsibility to communicate respectfully, no matter the method used for delivery of the message. I'm going to read that again. Everyone has a responsibility to communicate respectfully, no matter the method used for the delivery of the message. So it's telling us you don't have any excuses. That's basically, it's telling us very nicely, you don't have any excuses. Remember before, we take the responsibility and the accountability out of ourselves. Oh, well, it just slipped out. Oh, I didn't mean it like that. Say no matter what it is, even if you wrote it, if you text it, if it's a video conversation, and we'll go into them, you still have a responsibility to communicate that respectfully. It says types of workplace communication. We have live conversations, which most of us do on a daily basis, right? Live conversations. Much of the communication in the workplace is face-to-face. In this type of communication, body language, facial expressions, and tone of voice are evident and effectively contribute to the success or failure of the message delivered. Now that word, success or failure, that's really, really, really important in a workplace because it's telling you that, if you fail, that can ripple outward. Again, what are some types of, failure we have? Wasted products, if you're working in that type of business. You could have hurt feelings, which then could lead to inaccurate work being done. Then we have on the bigger scale, fraud. We have lawsuits. We have shootings, even leads to loss of jobs. All of those seem a little big, but they stem from the failure to communicate or the message being successfully delivered. Now this is an important part. I underline this in my book. It says active listening also plays a part as the speaker can make changes as needed based on observing the listener. So this is not absolving the listener. Yes, the speaker has a responsibility, but guess what? If you're listening, you have a responsibility too. Because to observe something is to take the time to look at it, to try to understand, to care about what they're saying. Yes, care. How many of you have ever been really, really, really excited to tell someone something, right? And you can feel the excitement, and you tell them, and just by their response, all the excitement just leaves your body, right? I've done that. I've had that done to me so many times, and eventually you're like, okay, am I excited about the wrong things, right? It kind of just like chips a little bit at you each and every time. So as listeners, we still have that responsibility in the communication. It says live conversations can also be by telephone or via means of video conferencing or video calls over the internet. And we know that lately this has taken place in a lot of businesses, and some of them have to been very creative to incorporate this into their workplace. So this is something that is very important right now. It says conversations in which the participants cannot see each other still require the use of self-control, proper facial expressions, and even body language, as all of these will affect the tone of voice and help convey meaning along with the words spoken. So that sentence tells me that, guess what? Your responsibility doesn't stop simply because they can't see your face. And again, as human beings, we like to absolve ourselves as much responsibility as possible. Well, they can't see me. I'm behind a screen. They're not right there, but they can't see you. So you can't see how your words will affect them. You can't see their face change. You can't see their posture change, which almost adds an extra responsibility to it because you still have to care. You still have to be aware of the things that you say. And even more so because when one sense isn't being used, the other ones are used even more. So if they're not seeing your face, they're listening extra closely to what you're saying, and they might pick up on the slightest little tone of voice, right? So, telling you, you're still not off the hook. Okay, continuing here, it says, active listening is especially important in phone conversations. Now, if anyone knows me, they know I don't like talking on the phone. Don't necessarily like face-to-face conversations either, but that's a different story. I don't like talking on the phone because I am very awkward on the phone, okay? So usually I just agree with whatever's being said, and I don't actually say what's needed in the conversation. And then afterwards, they're like, oh, well, you said yes. And I'm like, I know, it's because we were on the phone, right? So, yes, it's important that we communicate properly, even when we're on the phone. But listening, if you're multitasking and you're on the phone, you're doing other things, you might say something, agree with something, tell someone something, and then later they're like, you said blah, 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 blah. And you're like, I did? But guess what? Our words, we still have to hold up to them. So whenever they come back and they're like, oh, you said you would do this. Your supervisor says, oh, this was done today. Oh, it was? Were you paying attention? You said you would do this. Oh, I did? Responsibility. Now, I had a teacher that used to do this to me all the time. She would be busy, and I used to raise my hand and ask for something. And then later when I'd be doing it, she's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I asked you to do it. And she'd be like, oh, right, you did. Okay, so those types of situations can lead to more miscommunication if we don't take the time. And yes, we're busy a lot of times, but try to make the effort. That's the important word, the effort to take the time to hear what the other person is saying. And not just to hear it, but to respond in a manner that lets them know that you understood what they said. Okay, so let's continue. Written communication. This is my best like form. Written communication has always been a large portion of workplace interaction and communication. Interoffice memos and traditional business letters have become a larger digital work center. Instant messaging, email, and social media posts have all become part of the workplace landscape as businesses strive to reach their customers and clients through multiple channels. It is especially important to use clear language when communicating in written forms, as it is possible to read the same sentence in different ways, depending on the emotion perceived when reading and the emphasis placed on specific words. Now, let's stop and think about something. In the United States, we have a variety of different languages. Not everyone speaks English, right? We have different languages. If it's an international business, they might have to communicate with people who also speak other languages. If you don't take the time to make sure that what you're saying is clear and understandable, not for you, but for the other person, and they perceive something differently, think of all the ways that that could affect your business. Think of all the ways that that could affect the task that you're trying to do. So it's important as well that even if you say something that you think is clear, take the time to make sure that the other person thinks it's clear and the other person will understand, showing that care and that concern for them. It says, it is easy for a reader to misunderstand the tone of a message not clearly written. And we'll go on to know that there's something that can help with it. What I like is emojis, so you can help that situation, so you can understand what's being said. I don't know about you, but I kind of get scared when someone texts me without emojis because I can't tell what they're trying to say. So if that's what's necessary for the other person to understand, take the time to do that. If they prefer you to use simpler words, take the time to do that. Whatever it is that you can extend that branch to them to communicate, even if you have to go, an extra step, take the time to do that because it shows that you care and it can save you time and resources in the long run. Now let's go on to page 109. It says, enduring nature of digital media. Using digital methods for both written conversations and some verbal conversations, such as recordings of phone calls or meetings, ensures there is a record that remains after the fact. This can be helpful when there is a need to refer back to the previous conversations, but it also means that any hasty comments or misstatements will remain. What does the word hasty make you think of? Anyone? It makes you think of impulsive. And what's the definition of self-control? Not yielding to impulsive thoughts or actions, right? So it's saying that, at any point in time, if you kind of lose your self-control and you say something hastily or impulsively, most times there's a record of that. And that record most likely will affect your reputation. So is that hasty or impulsive comment really worth it in the long run? Did it really save you time? Did it really help you in that moment? It says, therefore, it is extremely important to conduct yourself in a manner that is always respectful, honest, accurate, and above reproach. Now, I love that above reproach part because oftentimes we're not exactly wrong, right? You might have done what you're supposed to do. You might not be wrong, but sometimes we're like, okay, well, I did what I was supposed to do. It wasn't wrong. But was it above reproach? Was it absolutely moral? Was it absolutely right? Did you do the best that you could do in that situation? Because sometimes it's not always about being right, but make sure that both sides feel like the right solution has been achieved. And that's very important to remember when communicating. It says, the way we speak and write is a learned skill developed over time. If we are honest with ourselves, we know that there is always room for improvement. Maintain a professional tone in the workplace, no matter the content or the recipient. This earns you a reputation of being a responsible and respectful worker at all times. And if someone can depend on you, if you're responsible, then guess what? That might lead to better opportunities for you, to where, you benefit from that. Not only does the other person benefit from your attention to detail and you're taking the time to communicate with them, but you could benefit from it also. It says, even activities outside of work can affect your work reputation. Employers and potential employers alike are increasingly turning to social media to see what kind of character employees or applicants display publicly online. Now remember the quote, the real test of self-control is what you do when no one's looking, when there's no one to impress. That shows who you really are. That shows that what you value. So that room for improvement is not just when someone's watching you or when you're put on the spot. That room for improvement is for yourself. That room for improvement is when you're all alone and you can stop and reflect, okay, these are some things I need to do better. And when I do those things better, instinctively when I'm at work, I will do those things. Instinctively when I'm in the presence of an employer or my coworkers, I will do those same things. Continuing, it says, a previous indiscretion can be hard to erase once posted on the internet, and a hastily typed post to a social network can spread rapidly. This is a perfect example of why it is important to think before you act. Self-control, the STOP acronym. Because we learned in the previous books that reputations are a lot harder to repair than they are to build, right? We can spend all that time building it, and then a single thing can knock it down. and it takes you twice, 3 times, 4 times as long to come back from that afterwards. How does that affect your livelihood? How does that affect the coworkers around you? Does that put extra work on them? Does that take away from the things that you could have accomplished? So what we're basically learning here is that taking the time to slow down and do things right the first time saves you in the long run. It says, today more than ever, we live in an instant society, and people often send messages and communications without taking the time to think through what they want to say, whether they should say it, and equally, if not more importantly, how it might be received. Again, you may think you're right. You can think that what you said is understood perfectly, but does it really matter if you think you're right? When it all comes down to it, does that really matter? No, because remember, respecting people makes the world go around. So you could think you're right all day long, but if someone else feels hurt by what you say, if someone else misunderstands, the problem's still there. Even if you think you're right, guess what? The problem will still be there until you exercise the character trait of humility, exercise the character trait of compassion and honesty, and reflect with yourself, okay, maybe I didn't do the best I could have done, and take the time to communicate that to the other person. And it takes care and concern. And to also take the time to know the people around you, become educated. If you know your coworker doesn't understand when you write in a red pen, take the extra second. Okay, let me care about her enough to go grab a black pen. If you know your coworker can't understand you when there's a lot of things go around, take the time. Excuse me, can I talk to you for a minute? So you take the time to make sure that she'll understand you. Simple things like that ensure that your message includes a responsible, respectful tone, and it makes sure that you take the time to be responsible and accountable for the things that you said. So the next teacher is going to go into some tips that we can use for responsible communication. And really take the time to pay attention to the things that we say. Slow down, because we all live in a very fast-paced world. Take the time to slow down and think about how the things you say, your words, your tone of voice, and your facial expressions don't just impact someone right now, they impact you later, and they can continue to impact them for the rest of their lives. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to the next teacher.
Hello, everyone. Let's give another round of applause for our first teacher. She did an amazing job. So we're going to pick up where she left off on page 109. And communication is extremely important in the workplace. And it's hard when you can't communicate, when you can't make that connection. So we've got some tips for responsible communication that we're going to read. And make sure you take notes on this because it's important that we know exactly how to communicate so that it makes the work environment a much better place to be in. The first tip, use proper grammar and sentence structure for the communication method you are using. People who use shortcuts in professionally written communication can be viewed as lazy and unprofessional, while those who use full sentences and are sticklers for grammar rules in instant message conversations can seem pretentious or arrogant. Your style should always fit the method used and the audience reading your messages. Perceptions is the key. So you want to know your audience. You want to know who you're talking to. And if you're in a group where there's a lot of cultural differences where some terms can mean different things, you want to be very careful, and it's important as managers and supervisors and just regular team members to know the different situations that you're in, and also gear how you deliver what you're saying to whomever you're talking to, because some people wear their emotions on their shoulders or their shirt sleeves, as they say. Some, it's written all over their faces. And even though they don't think they're in a bad mood, or portraying that, that's what their face is portraying. And that's why body language is very important too. So you want to try to be aware of everything you're saying and doing so that your audience or those that you're talking to are more receptive to what you're saying. And you make that connection, because if they shut down right at the beginning of when you're talking to them, I mean, I've been in team member meetings where I used to work, where the minute the person that was speaking came in, all they did was start lecturing and start blasting, and you shut down immediately. You want to make it welcoming, and you want to make your communications in such a way that people don't feel belittled, people don't feel like you're better than them. You're bringing it to each other's level. Now, when I send out text, I don't tend to abbreviate with BTW. Is that by the way? I will type out by the way, but that's just how I am. I come from that generation. It's called old. But you want to keep these things in mind, because the younger generation, I don't know how many times I've read a text and I text back and says, "What's BTW?" And they say, "Seriously?" So we want to keep these things in mind with who we're texting with and try to be able to make that connection. Number 2, it says, whether using verbal or written methods, an individual who is developing positive character traits should avoid using foul language or inappropriate slang. Now, that's a really, really big one, because when we use inappropriate language or when we use slang, especially when we're in mixed situations with different cultures and everything, we could be highly offending someone. Now, I attended a peace conference years ago, and one of the things that we were given was international gestures. Because here in the United States, when you put up this sign, it's okay. But in other countries, it's something really profane. Or, it's profanity. And it's like taken, well, I won't explain what it is, but it's not very nice at all. And these are the things that we want to be aware of when we're speaking with someone. Like if you're showing someone to their seat, if you do it with your palm up, it's insulting in some countries. You would do it with your palm down. And so these are the things that we want to, when we're dealing with different, nationalities and cultures, because I worked in a hotel where a lot of people that came to our country from different nations came, you learn about their culture and you learn about their way of doing things, and you find out what's respectful, you find out what's insulting. And these are things that we want to really be aware of. This should generally be unappealing communication if you're using, the profanity, or if you're using the gestures that can be highly offensive to the different nationalities or cultures, or even the generations. Today some of the words that are used in our younger generation is secondhand. But when I was that age, if I had used any of that language, I would have been knocked into next week. So we want to keep this in mind, because it can be highly offensive even for the older generation. Now, turning over to page 110, point number 3, it says, do include polite words such as please and thank you. Notes of appreciation shows others that you value them enough to take time to express it. And a great reference for this one right here is your respect unit on page 10, and it's the top paragraph. So for those of you that have the intermediate series books, go back and read about that tonight. But I wanted to focus on use words of please and thank you. When I first started working at one of the places that I worked at, I had a manager, because I would just throw words out, or I'd, can you do this, or can you do that? And the manager came up and says, you don't ever say please and thank you. And I said, I don't? And she said, no. And so I made it a point to try to start using please and thank you, but never once did the manager do it. So as supervisors and managers and things like that, if you're going to expect your workforce to do it a certain way, then you need to follow your own rules, because ultimately you are the example. And that's one thing that we have to keep in mind when we are supervisors or when we are managers, or even if we're just the team leader for that shift or something. If you expect something, if there's a rule, then you should keep the same rule yourself. And that's forgotten too often in the workforce. So I encourage you, as you're sharing these notes and these messages and things like this knowledge with your workforce, remember to do what you say or expect others to do. Continuing with point number 4, it says, avoid sounding unprofessional or controversial. Don't argue and don't debate. I'm guilty of that one all the time. And the reason is because I tend to say things that are misunderstood because of how I use my words, because of where I grew up. But sometimes when you're trying to say, that's not what I meant, it sounds like you're actually arguing or debating. Sometimes it's better to just leave it alone and say, okay, thank you for pointing that out to me, or however you want to do it, because the last thing you want to do is have that tension between you and your supervisor, or you and someone that you're training or teaching or working with. So keep those things in mind also, that we don't want to sound unprofessional, and we don't want to sound like we're in a controversy with someone, because the whole point of a pleasant work atmosphere is for all of us to get along together in unity. Point number 5, it says, people tend to read their own emotions into what they receive, so before you hit the send button, make sure you have properly conveyed what you are really intending to say, or what you really intended to say. And one of the ways that you can make sure of that is to reread the message before sending the message and to check it out again. And one of the things I do, and we'll cover this in the next point, but one of the things I always do when I'm sending a message is I walk away before I send it. And the reason that I do that is because I separate myself from it. Because when I'm upset, many times the only way that I know how to communicate is to write a letter, to type an email, to send a text. So I just type it all out, or however I do it, and if I hit send, many times I'm going to regret it. So I put it away, and then I come back to it later on. So these are things that we want to remember. And when you're reading it, you've already got these emotions going inside of you. So what I want to suggest that you do is listen to how you're feeling as you're reading it back to yourself. And if you feel an uncomfortableness, or if you feel a tension or something like that, no, that might be how the person's receiving it, especially if you just had an uncomfortable verbal exchange in person, or however it takes. So listen to what your body is telling you when you're sending a text or an email, or however you choose to communicate at that time. Point number 6, take time to read what you wrote before sending it, which is what the previous point is talking about, but it's also talking about emotions from the previous point. It's okay to leave what you wrote on hold. Remember the STOP acronym, which we have learned about on page 34 of this manual, and then go back and read it again. Walk away from it. Separate yourself from that situation. And when you do that, you're going to start thinking differently, because you're going to be coming down, especially if it's a heated email or text or whatever that you're sending, you're going to be coming down off that frustration. And when you come back and you read it, you're going to see what you were feeling, what you were typing and everything. Oh, no, I didn't mean to say that. And you can go back and you can redo it. Because when you stop and think, and then you reread it again, you see what's coming through to the recipient. Always take a professional approach. And as the previous teacher said, it doesn't hurt to throw in some emojis, because when I go back and read it and it does sound a little harsh, I'm thinking to myself, oh, they might take this wrong, and I really don't want it to be wrong because I don't mean it bad. I'll throw in some flowers or butterflies or something sweet and cute, a couple smiles or grins or something like that, because I want them to know I'm not upset, but I don't know how to put it in a way. So you want to soften it with the different things that are available to us today. Point number 7, it helps to read your final draft out loud. This is a hard one for me, especially when I'm giving a speech or I've got to do something like teaching or something. I'm not one to read it out loud. I'm not one to stand in the mirror and practice smiling. I'm not one to use hand gestures, or at least I didn't used to. And there's a story behind that, because when I was younger, a teenager, long time ago, I had a friend that said to me, "What are you doing with your hands?" Because I was all over the place with my hands. I says, "I'm talking." They said, "Put your hands behind your back." So I did, put them behind my back, and they said, "Now talk." And I just kind of looked around. I couldn't talk. And then I joined a speech class when I got older. And one of the things that you were graded on was hand gestures. Because I'd get up here and I'd just stand and I'd keep my hands straight and I'd say my speech and all that. Never mind the dialect that I had. I didn't use my hand gestures, so I always knew when the evaluation came, they were going to say, "You need more hand gestures." So then I practiced and I practiced and I practiced, and now I use hand gestures. But you have to guard your hand gestures too, because they can be taken the wrong way as well when you're having conversation with someone. So I just told on myself, so I just wanted to share that. Anyway, so read it out loud, because it's different when you read it out loud. You might feel silly like I do, or you might feel like, oh, this is fake. But read it out loud and listen to what you're saying. Point number 8, if you know the risk of misinterpretation is high and you want your message to be clear, ask someone else to read it before sending. He or she might see something that you didn't, which could help avoid a misunderstanding. Get a second opinion, because it can be beneficial in understanding what you're saying, and if it's going to be interpreted in a way that could be offensive because of the person's character that's receiving it. Now, one of the things that I want to mention is, if you're going to get somebody to read it, get someone you trust. Because if it's someone that's just trying to get ahead, and this can go for management, this can go for, your supervisors, your line people, or something like that. Get somebody that you trust. When I worked at where I worked and I would type up one of those emails because I was so frustrated, I got my daughter-in-law to do it, to come and read it, because I trusted her with everything. And I knew she would read it objectively. And whatever she said to me, she said, "This is how I'm getting this part of it." I'd say, "Okay, how would you word it?" And she would share how she would word it. And so we'd make the adjustment. And believe it or not, it changes the entire body of what you're trying to say. And anything that's offensive in it disappears. So make sure it's somebody that you trust, and it's not somebody that sees that badness and says, "Yeah, that's great, send it," because it's going to make points for them. So this is things that we want to work towards and look out for and everything, because not everybody that we work with in our different, businesses and everything is someone that really wants to try to help you the most. So this is things that we want to look out for. We'd like to be able to think that we could trust everybody that we work with, but I found out at a job that I previously worked at that that's not so always. So we want to keep these things in mind, because it has to be somebody that you truly trust and feel comfortable with. Point number 9. If you are responding out of anger or any other emotion, and that was me many times, Place your response in the draft file and read it again later. And I would actually go home and come back 2 or 3 days later to it, because I had to get those emotions pushed down. I had to get them out of me, because when you write in a high emotional state, you're going to end up regretting it. And it's not going to help you as far as your job. Okay, and read it later. Instantaneous vents could cost you or someone else their job. Venting can cause regrets in the workplace. Only you can control your emotions, and you can cross-reference self-control, the intermediate series, page 75 to 77. Allow yourself time to cool down, to get those emotions out of you, because emotions are extremely powerful, and when we allow those emotions to control us and how we react and how we deal with things, we're going to regret it almost every single time. I remember when I first started working at a new job that I was working at, it was so intense that I could feel the anxiety totally building up in me, and all I wanted to do was cry. And I'm not going to cry, but I could feel it building up, and I could feel the anxiety, and I could feel my heart starting to pound really, really hard and everything. And you had people on every side, and I turned and I looked at my supervisor, and I said, I have to go home. I went home, took a few deep breaths, got out my lavender, and I breathed. Came back and I was fine. Sometimes you have to step back so that you don't cause offense. And that's one of the greatest things that you, as supervisors and managers, can teach your people as well. Point number 10, use electronic communication methods carefully. Things posted on social media or emails, for example, can hurt others and even your own reputation. For instance, how would posting pictures of your personal life be viewed by a potential or present employer? Show care and concern by always laying a foundation of respect through the post or the message that you put out there on the internet, because it's not private. It's out there for whoever can get into your account to see. It's not private. You have to keep everything that you do professional. You have to keep it in a fashion that will be above any kind of reproach. People have been terminated because of what was posted on one type or another of social media. People have been not considered for a job application, because I'll tell you right now, we do go out and we look at what's on the internet. If we get this uneasy feeling in an interview, we're going to be Googling that person's name, and we're going to see what their life is like outside, because companies, and you know what your company expects, companies want respectable people. With the company that I just work for, you have to be able to pass a background check. You have to pass a credit check. You have to pass a drug test. And if you've got anything in your background, you're better off to tell someone, because they're going to find it. What's on the internet is not private. It's there for the whole world to see. And we have to remind everybody of that, because whatever you post out there, remember, keep it professional. Keep it something that you would want your grandmother to see. So it's just something to connect with, to try to help us, because I have a family member that puts all her business out there. When she's mad, when she's upset, when this, when that, and it's like, really? Because that's the image you portray of yourself. And that's the image that's going to reflect, because somebody's going to walk into your business and they're going to say, hey, I saw you on social media. And then what are you going to do? I don't know if anybody's ever watched some of the talk show hosts, but sometimes they'll do, this is who we saw on, this is one of our, audience guests, and this is what we saw them doing on social media. How embarrassing can that be? Well, what if it's your boss? What if it's your boss and a coworker sees it? It goes both ways. It's a two-way street. Point number 11. In casual or less formal situations, emoticons, those smiley faces often seen in instant messages or emails, can be a great way to ensure your message conveys the emotions that you express. And as our previous teacher said, if you don't have those emoticons, she said, what are they really saying? What's the message? It does. It helps you to express what you're really feeling. The formal nature of some business communications will preclude this, but where appropriate, a smiley face or other emoticon can go a long way to avoid misunderstandings. Overall, keep all communication respectful. And if you're not able to use the little smiley faces or the little different pictures and stuff like that, you can do it with words too. Where I used to work, because I was trying to start the day out on a really pleasant note, I'd have a positive quote. Many of them were pulled out of the Peaceful Solution books so that it would generate that. And when I stopped doing it for a while, one of the major managers, like from corporate office, said, I really enjoy those. Why aren't you doing them anymore? We can have an effect on anybody that we come in contact with, even if we don't think we're having any effect at all. And that can be with our words, with our body language, our facial expressions, the things we type, the things we say, do, how we carry ourselves, in all these different ways. Watch out for spell check, and that's a big one, and autocorrect as well. Now, how many have been burnt by autocorrect? I have. And the thing is go back and read something before you send it, because you don't know what autocorrect has done. It can cause a lot of problems. Take the time to read before sending, especially if you're dictating it to your phone. Because I don't know about you, but Siri can sure stir up a lot of trouble. And that's one of the things that we want to remember. I sent out a text once. I was dictating it because I was driving in the car. And I hit send. And then I looked at it real quick because I came to a stop sign. I said, oh, shoot. And I quickly texted my boss and I said, disregard that. Siri doesn't know how to spell. So keep these things in mind. We want to be aware of everything that comes out of our mouth, out of our body language, out of the things that we say and do. So let's continue on page 111. It says positive interaction and communication in the workplace is everyone's responsibility. It's not just the managers. It's not just the corporate level. It's every person that has a job and is given a job to do. The words you use, the tone of your voice, your facial expressions, the words you write, and how you write them, the images posted all say a lot about who you are. It talks about your character and whether or not you are responsible enough to respect those that you interact with. And as managers and supervisors who are learning how to make our workplaces a better place through the Peaceful Solution, that's one of the things that we have to take home with us, is how we interact with everyone. Because every single person in your workplace has a different personality, has a different issue going on at home, has different things going on in their life, in their background, in their history. That morning, they could have walked out and they were already running late and come out to a flat tire, and so they're already worked up, only to be stopped because their blinker is burnt out and the cop was giving them a citation. These are the things that we have to keep in mind. We don't ever have the entire picture of what's going on in a person's life that we work with, that we supervise. And these are things that we want to keep in mind. We also want to remember that our body language, our facial expressions, photos and images say a lot about who we are. Be careful about what we post, what we say, how we interact, whether we roll our eyes or not, whether we sigh, whether we look away of a conversation because we just don't like the way it's going. There's all these little things that can cause tension in the workplace. And as managers, we all have to be aware of that, because how we interact is going to affect each and every person that we're interacting with. And that's something that I can't stress enough. Continuing on with stop and think. And this would be a great, when you're having these little meetings with your employees and everything, this is a really great discussion for the class. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to share 2 instances from personal experiences and hope it helps to paint the picture so it's clearer. Can you recall a time when someone communicated his or her needs in an irresponsible way? What were the consequences? Well, the way that comes clear to my mind right now is we had a person that worked in our housekeeping department, and she started picking and picking and picking and saying, you shouldn't do that, or you shouldn't do this. Well, instead of taking her grievances in a right way, she called OSHA. For those of you that don't know what OSHA is, it's a governmental, it's a governmental group that makes sure that laws are enforced that are supposed to dictate safety. But what she didn't realize, or she might have, I don't know, is when OSHA comes into a workplace, it's grueling. And I was blessed to have to do a lot of the investigating, typing up, answering all of OSHA's questions and everything, because my boss was on a trip. And it's intimidating, because if you have a extension cord with a little bit of a cut on it and you're using it, well, that's a fine, or that's something that they can get you on. There's so many rules and regulations that it makes it really hard. And that wasn't a great way for them to actually handle that situation, because it created that animosity. And before you knew it, she didn't have a job. But the thing is the work establishment can't terminate her, because then they're thinking she's being terminated because of this. So you have to deal with that person until they actually walk away or cut their own throat. Now, the second part says, can you recall a time when someone communicated his or her needs in a responsible way, and what was the outcome? Well, the same thing occurred where we talked about safety concerns because there was doors that were blocked and things like that. And it was communicated to the general manager. And the person that communicated it, sadly was, I say sadly because it was me, was made responsible for the safety training of the entire workplace. And every week on a certain day, certain people had to come in, and you trained them for 2 hours in safety. But because of that, everyone got educated in proper safety ways, whereas the other one caused a lot of frustration and everything. So the outcome of communicating responsibly is always the best way to communicate. And with that, I thank you all for your attention, and I look forward to our next class